Hey, what's going on, everyone? From Forward Progress, I'm Rob Pizzola. This is On the Clock. It's the show where we put ourselves in the shoes of an NFL general manager and we go through a 7-round mock draft for that respective team. If you haven't tuned into the series before, check out the playlist, On the Clock. We've done a bunch of teams already. You can go through all of those that we've done so far. And of course, make sure that you're subscribed to the Forward Progress channel right here on YouTube as well so that you get a notification every single time that we go live. Yesterday, I did a mock draft with Eric Eager of Sumer Sports for the Kansas City Chiefs. I'm bringing him back in today as we discuss the Philadelphia Eagles. Eric, how's it going?
Things are good. It's fun to talk about the Super Bowl runner-up, a very good team that I think embodies a lot of the great team building notions that guys like you and I espouse, on our various podcasts and that kind of thing.
I'm very interested in doing this Eagles one because they have 2 first-round draft picks. They're picking at 10th overall. They're picking late in the first round as well. And they've had a pretty, I'll call it a tumultuous offseason where they had the most free agents of any team in the league, especially on defense. Now they were able to re-sign a bunch of players. They re-signed Jason Kelce at center. They re-signed James Bradberry, Brandon Graham, Fletcher Cox. Robert Quinn's still a free agent right now as well, but they did lose players. They lost TJ Edwards to the Bears. They lost Isaac Small, one of their guards, Philadelphia Eagles. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson goes to the Detroit Lions. Miles Sanders with the Panthers. Javon Hargrave with the San Francisco 49ers. They offset that. They picked up Rashad Penny at running back. Terrell Edmonds comes over from the Steelers, coming off a very good year, still only 26 years old. And they bring in Marcus Mariota to be their backup, who kind of fits that system pretty well, I guess, if Jalen Hurts gets injured. But there's been a lot of shuffling around for the Philadelphia Eagles, and I think that's what makes this one especially challenging today.
Yeah, like we were going through, the depth chart kind of off air, and it's just like it's a lot of depth they need, right? They get, you look at, and it's funny, like Rashad Penny is the starting running back for this team, right? But like you look at that offense, wide receiver 3 could probably use an upgrade. And in fact, a lot of, the depth there could use an upgrade. Offensive line, to your point, like you're looking at, some young players, Cam Jurgens playing in that stead, tight end. They don't really have a backup to Dallas Goedert, who has at times been injured during the course of his career. So it's a lot of depth. It's not necessarily like they need a starter here, but this draft is going to be very meaningful for them as they continue to move into a space where they've done a lot of void year stuff. They've done a lot of, cap manipulation stuff. It's not going to be easy for them to access players, especially once Jalen Hurts gets his mega deal. This draft is going to be a big draft as far as can they maintain the brilliance that they had last year in the NFC.
Yeah, good point. Especially on offense, you look at the team and it's like, well, they don't really need anything. I mean, they can improve at certain positions, but if they went into the year with this being their offense, they'd be perfectly fine and they would be happy with that. This is a team that was just a step away from winning the Super Bowl last year in a very close game. And of course, they're the favorites in the NFC as we look at the betting markets heading into this year. If we take a look at the defensive side of the ball, what are we seeing here? I mean, immediately, I don't see the depth on the defensive line that we saw a year ago, which was arguably one of the reasons why that defense had so much success in the regular season.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little misleading because Hassan Reddick plays defensive end in nickel situations. So, but then that opens up the fact that linebacker is Nakobe Dean, who is a guy that didn't play last year much and, wasn't healthy. That was why he was the best linebacker in college football and yet went all the way in the third round. Nicholas Morrow has, with the Raiders and the Bears has always been kind of just an average linebacker. And so, that's a depth need. But, do you really want to use one of your top picks on a position that is a non-premium position? Graham, Sweat, Barnett, and Reddick give you good edge pressure. But, you look at the interior, Jordan Davis is a first round pick. Fletcher Cox, later on in his career, where are you going to get that third player? Milton Williams, just a third round pick a few years ago that a lot of people liked, small school guy, but not necessarily, brilliance there. So there's an opportunity. And then to your point, free safety, you need somebody there to at least compete with Reed Blankenship, who is a surprise. And that corner, like, look, you were close to losing Darius Slay. You were close to losing James Bradberry. Greedy Williams comes over from Cleveland. That's a solid addition. But you do really need to sort of think about revving that up as well, because Chauncey Gardner-Johnson was a player who kind of combined everything really well as an inside outside kind of safety player.
Yeah. Point of note as well, Derek Barnett would be back on the defensive line. I believe they lost him week 1 last year to an ACL injury. I think it was against the Lions, if I remember correctly. Yep. So, I mean, that's just like, obviously, I don't want to say over the hill, not the impact player that he once was, but it's maybe a little bit better than I was giving them credit for after looking over the overall depth chart. So I think we can agree that, I mean, they can improve at some positions, but there's not necessarily like this massive need for the Eagles anywhere right now.
No, there's really no position where if they didn't come out of the draft with that position, they'd be screwed. And they're so good at accumulating picks. You know, they flipped Jalen Reagor for a 5th last year. Like, they do such a good job of like getting off a play. You know, it's sort of like embedding, right? Where you get off a bad number, you're not worried about juicing out a little bit, just, you know, to avoid catastrophe. They do that really well. And so they're, you know, the reason they have 2 first-round picks this year is because they didn't really see a need to have 3 last year. So they traded out with New Orleans and got that pick this year. So they're a very sharp team. And like, much like we did with Kansas City yesterday, there might be a situation wherein we trade out of this draft completely if there's not a position we really like.
All right, well, let's get to it. Same as usual. For anyone who hasn't seen the series before, we're using Pro Football Focus to mock this draft. We're going to keep their standardized settings for the draft. We're drafting the Philadelphia Eagles, 7 rounds, and we're going to start the draft off on slow so we can see how it unfolds near the top. One of the things about having 2 first-round picks, we have capital that we can move around. If there's a player that we want to trade up for, we could possibly do that as well. So we'll start it off, and we'll enter the draft room right now. Carolina at number 1. Typically, these drafts go 1, 2, 4 quarterbacks, with Arizona picking someone else at 3. On actual draft day, we might see Arizona move out of the 3 spot. I think that's very likely, as a team might want to trade up for a QB there. But let's get it started and see what's left to the Eagles at 10, or we can stop it at any point, Eric. You can tell me to stop if we want to. Bryce Young off the board. Anthony Richardson, again, to the Texans at 2. Will Anderson, 3. CJ Stroud, 4. Jalen Carter at 5 to the Seahawks. Peter Skoronski, again, goes in the top 10. That's a second draft you've done where Skoronski goes pretty high. Will Levis off the board at 8 to the Falcons. And Paris Johnson goes right before us at number 9 to the Chicago Bears. So we are on the clock. I'll give the full picture to everyone. We have 4 trade options. The next pick would be the Texans at 12, potentially Steelers 17, Lions 18, Chiefs 31. Or we can draft, and here's who's available. Devin Witherspoon, Quentin Johnson, Christian Gonzalez, Jackson Smith and Jigba, JSN, as he's referred to, Kalaya Kancey, Lucas Van Ness, who's been mocked to the Eagles a lot in this spot, Dalton Kincaid. So give me your immediate thoughts here, Eric, and what's like, you know, going through your head right now with this number 10 pick.
Yeah, I think, you know, with all 4 quarterbacks off the board, you're not going to be as enticing to the Titans or the Texans or the, you know, even like the Jets or Patriots. You know, my initial thought is JSN here because when I looked at the offensive depth chart, you have your really good Devontae Smith, really good AJ Brown. Your quarterback is coming up on his contract, which means you're probably not going to be able to pay both Devontae Smith and AJ Brown what they're full deals while also having Hurts on a full deal. So there is a part of staggering that with JSN. 2 years, you know, let's, you know, possibly trade Smith at some point. That is another one. The other one, and this is a kid from, you know, Pennsylvania in college, Kalaya Kancey is a guy who analytics like kind of jump off the board for him, for me. You know, a little smaller, much like Aaron Donald was, you know, 6'1", 281, 22. Like, you know, you pair him, you know, Jordan Davis is the big guy, right? Picked right around here last year. And then you have this, you know, you have Kalaya Kancey coming in as a smaller guy. You kind of have a good pairing there in terms of size on the defensive line. The issue that I have is I think you could probably get him later. What does the trade market look like? So
basically we could go back to 12 here with Houston. I mean, This ensures if we drop 2 spots, it could possibly be Cansey and JSN get drafted here, but it seems unlikely that that's going to be the case. What would we be able to get out of Houston for this?
Could you get a 2 next year?
We could probably get a 2 next year.
I think that is a reasonable, again, as we talk about pushing, the Eagles like to push money into the future through void years and stuff like that. We also want to push cheap assets into the future. So that would be my thought. What if you can get a 4 in 20, a 4 in 25? Let's just try that. It's not going to add a ton to the it's not going to, Houston's got a lot of picks, right? So
Tons.
They might be willing to part with them if they really like a player here. So let's try that trade.
Okay.
So a future 2 and a future 4. We get that.
I love this, by the way. This is your draft, and we'll see what comes off the board here. We're still on slow. So it's Nolan Smith to the Texans and Christian Gonzalez. So we still have basically our 2 available options, which is beautiful. Now,
yeah.
I love what you said about JSN, and I want to talk about it just for a second. And again, it's your draft. You're picking whoever you want here. But we will get crucified if we pick JSN by a lot of the commenters here. And I want to talk this through because I think what you made, the points you made are extremely valid. And what I've noticed in other mock drafts that I've done is the fan base in general puts a ton of value on positional need. And I think a lot of Eagles fans will be like, we don't need a receiver. But that does not mean that you can't add the danger that the Eagles offense could pose next year to other teams with AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, JSN, and Dallas Goedert on the field at one time. Okay, it's not a position of need, but you can improve a position of strength to the point where you're actually so good there that no one can stop you.
Well, the other issue is that where are the Eagles trying to win? They're trying to win in January and February. And, there's research. You go to pff.com. I did it a long time ago. In January, your EPA per play is almost zero correlated with how your best receiver does in the game. It's all 2, 3, 4, and 5. And the reasons are important. Like the Chiefs were healthy in the secondary in the Super Bowl, right? Mm-hmm. The Niners are healthy in the secondary in the playoffs. And so they can always take away wide receiver 1. It's whether or not they can, and Quez Watkins had a huge drop in that Super Bowl. So again, you want to be able to fight off your opponents in the suit, and so this year, a wide receiver is not going to come out of the gate and do anything on average, but he might like Sky Moore scored a touchdown in the Super Bowl, right? Like these guys emerge later. And that's, if you're an Eagles team, that's where your money's made this year. You're trying to be a Super Bowl team. And so again, that to me is, I think, one point. And then the other point is that, again, like you're going to have to choose between Devontae Smith and AJ Brown. Why don't you make that choice easier now for your future self?
Totally agree. We have trade options too here. I mean, we do not have to draft.
So let's just take Smith and Njigba. I don't really want to mess with this. Like, for one, it's good content, and 2, it's the right thing to do, and 3, I don't want to risk. Like, Kalia Cansey makes a lot of sense, but like, there's also a chance that he falls to us at our next pick or in a region that we're okay with.
Totally agree. Okay, we're doing it. JSN is an Eagle. As a Cowboys fan, that makes me want to throw up all over myself right now. I think that's a great pick for them. Okay, so we're at pick number 30. It looks like every team in the NFL wants to trade up to number 30 here because there's 13 trade proposals.
Yeah, let's look at that because, you don't need a tackle because you have Lane on a big deal and you have Jordan Mailata as a young player. Banks might be a good one, but again, you worry why he's 16 and falling to 30. Edge could work, but we talked about that. They're more needing of an interior. So let's think about a trade here.
Okay. I will say this with Deonte Banks. I have done probably, I'm not exaggerating, 1,000 mock drafts at this point. Some obviously not on YouTube, some just messing around because I'm addicted to this stuff on a daily. And I don't know that I've seen Deonte Banks available at 30 in any of the drafts that I've done. I'm not forcing a pick on him. I'm just merely pointing that out. And just looking at consensus mock drafts this year, I don't think I've seen anything where he drops that far either. So Steelers at 32. And basically everyone that's picking next wants to move up. So it's
presumably for Banks, you'd assume.
I would think so. Yes.
So you have Bradbury and Slay on the. You don't have it out of depth. Let's just take Banks. That makes a reasonable pick. To your point, you're getting value there.
I again, like a lot of people might say, well, the Eagles don't need a corner, but they can. You can.
Every
improve,
team needs a corner, though.
Like every team needs players, like good players, and when you have somebody that's positionally of this value, Deonte Banks to the Eagles. So Eagles are picking next at 62. The options that are available when you have 2 first-round picks are pretty.
I want to see something here, Rob. Just give me the vibes here. See what Chris Jones costs.
Okay.
In a trade.
So I've never actually done trades to other teams. So Kansas City Chiefs. Chris Jones, defensive tackle, interior defense. Right
now, so if I were to give 62 and next year's 2 that we just traded for,
it would be accepted.
Let's do that.
Now, should we just lowball them and give them a worse pick for next year, like a third?
Will they take a 3?
The 3 they will take, almost certainly.
Okay.
God, I love this so much. I'm such a huge fan of what's happening right now. All right. We're trading essentially our late second and a third for Chris Jones. And the Chiefs accept it. And the Chiefs are now on the clock for a couple of picks.
But Chris Jones hasn't signed an extension yet. So
correct.
This is like AJ Brown last year.
Yep.
Now I have interior defensive line fixed.
I love what just happened here. And I already can see in our fictional world right now, the rematch in the Super Bowl and like Chris Jones sacks Mahomes to end the game, strip sack, something like that. This is how sports are written. Okay, 1 trade offer at 94, which is the Texans, where we can move back to 104.
Let's take Chandler Zahava, the interior offensive line from NC State.
Okay, just really want to quickly take a look at him here. In terms of 6'5", 325, big boy.
Yeah.
Big boy.
That's an Isaac Samalu like size player, right?
Yep. He only allowed 4 pressures on 422 pass blocking snaps last season. It's the type of guy you want. Chandler Zavala from NC State at 94. So there's going to be a huge gap here. I'm just going to pause and actually put this on turbo instead of fast so that we can fire off to 219 as quickly as possible. 100 other teams. Yeah, you know what? This is the first time that we've done a draft where we considered trading for another player mid-draft. Love the idea. People might say, oh, the Chiefs would never do that with Jones. But to your point, with the way that money comes into and contracts come into play in the NFL, I think it's totally reasonable. And honestly, the Chiefs are probably more likely to trade him to the NFC than they are to another team in the AFC.
Yeah, and he's 30 or he's like 28. I think I can't remember. He's closer to 30. He's third contract. The Eagles have no qualms about like signing him to a deal and backloading the hell out of it. And Chris Jones in like 2 seconds is a great return for him.
Yep.
And if we just picked up a second next year. So, that's to me, that's a really good way to play the draft.
I'm looking at the board here now. Marte Mapu, Sacramento State. I don't know a lot about him other than the fact that he always goes before round 7 in previous mocks as well. So that's kind of like a positional value pick. Yeah. We do have another interior defender in Broderick Martin here. Anthony Johnson, PFF loves this guy. I was doing a mock draft with Ian McMillan for the Atlanta Falcons this week, and we weren't sure if like Anthony Johnson got caught smoking a bong or something like that, and he's just his ADP is dropping. But we do have some safeties on the board here that are potentially within the range.
Yeah, I think you probably. I mean, the thing is like every time that I've ever talked to a team in my role at PFF or Sumer, and I was like, hey, my models really like this player. Why didn't you take him high? They're always like, he's a prick or he's hurt. And so like the thing with the Eagles, though, is Howie is not a scout. Howie's a finance guy. He took Nakobe Dean last year, even though Dean had bad medicals. If the reason Anthony Johnson is here is because of something like that, I think they're willing to take a shot. They do need safety depth. And so let's take Johnson out of Iowa State here.
All right. Anthony Johnson. And then we're going to get to 248, which is one of the last picks of the entire draft. Does Mr. Irrelevant, is that the final pick of the 7th round or just the final pick of the draft?
They're the same.
Well, because they have all these compensatory picks this year, right?
No, but it's like Easter, right? Like the Mr. Irrelevant has changed the number every year but it's the last. Yeah, it's not the last natural pick. It's literally the last pick.
Got it. Okay. And our
let's take your guy, the Sac State. I know they gave up a ton of points in the FCS semifinal, but that's an homage to my degeneracy. But go ahead and take Marte Mapu, the safety from Sac State, would be my pick there.
I mean, 2 safeties in the 7th round. If one of them amounts to something, they amount to something. I think like you're crapshooting in the 7th round here. Interested to see the grade for this draft, especially the Chris Jones trade, which I don't think PFF
I'm interested
will like,
because the last time I did, I don't know if they grade
they don't grade they do. Oh no, they don't grade the trade for the player.
They grade the draft. So,
well, I mean, we got flying colors in this draft. So we moved down 2 picks to get a future 2nd rounder, a future 4th rounder. We still got the player that we wanted, moving down 2 picks, which we rated A+ for. Deonte Banks, again, Eagles don't quote unquote need a corner. They get pretty much a steal in that spot. Interior O lineman, couple late safeties. Chris Jones fills like the interior defense. I don't know what people could really complain. I don't know what people could complain about with this draft personally. I don't know what your thoughts are on overall, but I think this went about as well as expected.
Yeah, it's funny because I always think about these trades of players, and the last one we did, I was like, what's a wide receiver that's available? And I'm like, there is, it's like, but when we came up in round 2, I'm like, I don't really like any of these players. Let's at least look at, if the Chiefs, and I'm surprised, I think age and everything factors in, but 2 seconds, especially a late second and what is going to be a late 3rd and 24 in expectation, that's a pretty good thing for Jones. But Jones does come if he doesn't get an extension before the draft, he's coming with a cap hit of $28 million. So they would have to this is one of those things like last year, the Eagles agreed to trade for AJ Brown weeks before. And the Hollywood Brown trade was also agreed to because you have to make the money work. And so with Jones being on a veteran deal and the Eagles, they would have to, I don't know if you'd see the tea leaves, because the Eagles, I mean, they have 14 million or it's 19 million in space, 19.9. So they really only have to basically what? They're kind of actually maxed out as far as restructures. So you'd have to do something. You'd have to add void years, I think, to they might be maxed out here. That's my only issue with that trade is that they might be maxed out as far as if you look at their over the cap, every base salary is the minimum salary for Lane Johnson, Darius Slay. So that would be the only one. The maybe Jalen Hurts could give them some if they extended Jalen Hurts some. They could push a little bit of money around and void year some stuff, but that would be my only concern is that they would have to max out even more or Jones would have to agree to an extension before the trade. Those would be things that I think are the only issue associated with this.
Well, if you're an Eagles fan out there and you're watching this, let us know if you'd be happy with this draft or if you think we should have done something completely differently. Let us know down in the comments below. Make sure you check out Eric's stuff with Sumer Sports. He has a great podcast with Thomas Dimitroff, former Atlanta Falcons general manager as well, which is a must listen if you're an NFL fan. So check out Sumer Sports, check out Eric's stuff. And if you haven't subscribed yet to the Forward Progress channel, make sure you do so. We plan on hitting every team prior to the NFL draft and then doing some live watch along content for the NFL draft as well. So make sure you hit that subscribe button. And if you did enjoy the comment today, smash that like button as well. This has been On the Clock with the Philadelphia Eagles here on Forward Progress.